Hey there, Four States. This is Luke Taylor. Welcome to another edition of the KNEO Community Connection. And we have a special guest in studio today. Our State Senator Jill Carter has visited us, and we're going to do a little bit of a reflection here on the political process that just played out here over the past week and talk about what we need to be working on for the future. And so, Senator Carter, thanks for joining us here in studio.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for letting me come and talk about this important issue with you.
Yeah, so we just had an election day last week. And, a lot of people happy with many of the things that happened on Election Day. But also here, just speaking specifically for Missourians, some things got added to our Constitution that many people are not happy about. And you've been sounding the alarm on the initiative petition process for several years now, wanting to see some reform on that. Since there hasn't been any movement in that direction by the legislature, that's why it's become so easy for amendments to get added to our Constitution. Can you, maybe now that people see why this is such a big issue, could you kind of walk us through all that again? And I'll just let you take it away.
Yeah, so let's just start talking about how we got here. And a lot of this has happened through what we call the IP process, or the initiative petition process, which is a beautiful concept in governance, which means that if the legislature fails to do something, then the people have a way to go around or circumvent the legislature to get something put into the Constitution. So that's a healthy check in the system. But currently, it requires 8% of signatures gathered in 6 of the congressional districts. So if you're changing a constitution, it's 8% of the voters from 6 congressional districts. If you're changing something statutorily, it's 5% from those same congressional districts. So then what happens is that language is approved by the Secretary of State, the ballot language, all of that gets put on the ballot. But where the real problem lies is how we ratify our Constitution. So when we talk about IP reform or changing the initiative petition process, we've packaged it, that 2-part process, into one word. And so we need to be better. I'm trying to also be better about articulating and say initiative petition process should not change. That's something that's healthy. But how we ratify our Constitution when it gets put on the ballot is something that has made our Constitution very vulnerable, in that it only requires a 50 plus 1% vote to pass or change or alter our Constitution. This is something that's very rare across the country. It's something that it's more difficult in a lot of other states for you to change your Constitution. It makes your Constitution more vulnerable. Simply because, again, it's 50 plus 1. And so if you look at the map, and we've talked about this, Luke, if you look at the map and you see how marijuana has passed,
right,
how the gambling has passed, and also how Amendment 3 passed, it predominantly is 3 areas of our state that have passed this. The more urban areas of our state: Columbia, St. Louis, and Kansas City. If you look at the rest of the state, it's very much green, right? There's different shades of green. Green being
counties that voted no on Amendment 3 here in this most recent election.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. And so that's a map that we shared on our website. We'll have that on our website, also on social media, so you can look at that map yourself. But that's pointing to the issue that's happened time and time again. This is almost, if you juxtapose this issue, this abortion issue, over the marijuana issue, it's almost the exact same mapping. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what we've been talking about in the legislature for the past several years, I know they've been working on it, and the language has been different over the course of the last 7, but the last 2 years that I've been in, we filed what's called concurrent majority ratification. So not touching the initiative petition process, but how we ratify or change our Constitution in that election process or voting process, making it where it's not just a simple majority vote from across the state, it's actually congressional districts. So you have to have a majority of congressional districts vote to pass it.
Yes.
Making it a merging of the rural urban populations so that there's equal representation there. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say this would I hope people understand our Constitution for Missouri. It was put in place when Missouri became a state.
Yes.
It's not supposed to be something that is just wildly swinging one direction and the other with every election cycle. We don't want it to be so easy to just make any changes we want to our Constitution. We want it to be something, since it's such a foundational document to the governments of our state, we want it to be something that is pretty solid unless you have a strong majority of Missourians in favor or opposed to making any changes.
Agree. Yes, exactly. You look at our national founding documents that's, simply pages.
Right.
And you look at our state constitution that is being, weaponized against us on some of these issues. And it's in a very, very vulnerable position. And so concurrent majority ratification, again, is just taking that urban-rural divide, blending it, and saying it has to, if we're changing our constitution, then there needs to be more buy-in from the rest of the state. Those flyover portions of the state should have an equal voice in what happens. And this is how we have our electoral college when electing a president. This is a similar kind of system,
right,
where Wyoming should have, equal representation. Each state has 2 senators. That ensures equal representation there. But then also it's broken down into electoral votes based on population. Similar thing with the concurrent majority ratification. And also, if you look at how we elect even or pass laws at the state level, every district based on its population has some kind of representation that's equal to everyone else. And you send them up and they represent you and they pass legislation based on those values of that district. And so we have that melting pot that mirrors, what we're talking about with an electoral vote and also with concurrent majority ratification. So this is just putting that process back in place where, again, the minorities have a voice that's equal to the more urban areas.
Right. Well, so I was looking at this map that you shared with us a few days ago, where we're talking about the green and the blue counties. It is plain to see there's maybe 7 or 8 counties in Missouri that wanted to pass Amendment 3 last week.
Yeah.
Out of how many counties do we have? 100 and something?
Yes, 100, and I don't know that off the top of my head, but I should.
Yeah, but out of all the counties in Missouri, you can tell by looking at the map, it's almost all green counties that voted no on this thing, except for just a few spots, like you said, Kansas City, Columbia, and St. Louis. So what that means is, therefore, we over here in Newton County are living by the dictates of what people in Kansas City might want to live by. And there's a lot of people here in Newton County, we don't necessarily want to smell marijuana or see one of these marijuana stores all over the place as you're driving up and down the street. Maybe that's how people in Kansas City want to live, but we don't necessarily want that for our local community. And so we are forced to live by what they're pushing on us, basically.
Right. And again, it's codified in our state constitution. So anytime something gets added to the Constitution, the other thing that's helpful to know is that it takes another constitutional amendment to change that amendment. And so it has to go back to the people. So I caution also people, I get texts and phone calls, which I am so grateful to have people giving their input. But something that's important to know is some of the changes we've been talking about in ratifying the concurrent majority ratification or how we ratify our Constitution is raising the threshold of passage, meaning you have to get 60% to change it. Well, if we had passed that, if we go in and now pass that, what's the likelihood of us being able to, claw back out of Amendment 3?
Yeah.
So again, concurrent majority doesn't mess with the thresholds. It's simple majority, but it's just of those congressional districts.
Okay.
So it makes it doable as far as, those issues. And it shouldn't be targeted to one or more issues. So people, when we were fighting this issue the last 2 years, they say, well, it's because you're afraid of the abortion issue. No, it should have been done 7 years ago, 10 years ago, long before. Ago. And it's been debated for that long, but there just has not been the appetite. And so with it, abortion coming up, it was something that was on the forefront of everybody's mind. But now we've reaped the rewards of postponing our actions.
Yeah. So this is why if this had been settled years ago, we wouldn't be where we are today. Right.
And then you would have an equal representation of the people across the state. The fundamental document that we have, our state constitution, is the document that we abide by. It drives every other thing. It's not, you can't go in and statutorily change it. It's very difficult, so it shouldn't be so weaponized.
Right. It shouldn't. So how many pages is our Missouri state constitution by this point? Any idea?
It's a book.
It's a book?
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas I think you were making this point earlier that the Constitution for the United States of America is like less than 10 pages, probably,
right.
Depending how you printed it, I guess.
Yeah, depending on how you print it, but very simple. It has several amendments and the Federalist Papers and such kind of explain all of that. But definitely, if you were to stack them together, our state constitution is probably 4 times.
And those who made the founding documents of America, they had the foresight to realize we don't want the American Constitution to be something you can just change willy-nilly. That's why there's been a limited number of amendments that have passed in all of our hundreds of years now of our country's history.
It's difficult.
Yeah. You have to get 2/3 of the states. They made it a difficult process because they don't want to change the Constitution unless it's something that plainly all Americans are actually wanting for their country.
It's a grave concern, right?
Right.
And it's interesting, too, because in some states that even passed this abortion issue, on Tuesday, for example, Nevada passed it, but they have to go back. So it's simple majority, just like ours, but they have to pass it twice. So there's more dialogue, more debate. Realizing also that the abortion issue, Amendment 3, passed with $30.5 million in favor of outside interest money, dark money.
Yeah. And
some people are saying that was international money being funded to come into our state against, and what we spent was $1.5 million fighting it. And so honestly, to see it was a David and Goliath fight and to see that it barely passed, I think if we had more resources or more time, I don't know that it would have passed.
So we're getting basically our state's being flooded with money from people not even in Missouri who are pushing these things through.
Yeah, to what benefit, right?
Right.
And so watching the election, like a lot of people were across the country on Tuesday, it was interesting as they were talking about, you had the Susan B. Anthony organization that's very pro-life. They were talking about what was going on nationally with the abortion issue. And they were saying that outside money, international money, had flooded America on this issue to try to get out the vote in some swing states to change the federal election. So, connecting those dots and saying, why was this money being dumped in Missouri to move this agenda? Well, what they're saying is it happened nationally to try to change the outcome of a national election, to drive out voter turnout for the Democrats.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of things out there to be concerned about in how changes are made to our state, how easily things are added to our state constitution. Now, looking at Amendment 3, I know that I've been having lots of conversations this week with Christians who are like, well, now that it's here, is there anything that can be done to turn this around, to stop this? What are our options as far as all that goes?
So they're looking at a constitution. Now what has to happen is there has been a lawsuit filed by, I believe it's Planned Parenthood, the people that put the ballot initiative on the ballot in the first place, to try to repeal the heartbeat bill that have given us these protections. So that's their first steps and actions in implementing Amendment 3.
Okay.
Amendment 3 will go into effect in 30 days, typically, after a constitutional amendment passes. It goes into effect in 30 days. So we're watching that. I talked to our AG, Andrew Bailey, yesterday. He said they're looking at it. Everybody right now is just trying to say, okay, what's the best way to kind of go after this. One thing that we're considering is just trying to get constitutional amendments that kind of claw back, transgender surgeries, protections for doctors who don't want to perform them. Parental rights, medical parental rights, consent for parents, kind of taking all of those issues that was enshrouded into Amendment 3, extrapolating them, pulling them out and saying, okay, how can we tackle this one-on-one so that it's kind of clawing back some of those initiatives. Okay. So that's something we're talking about. Initiative petition reform, looking at that, how we ratify change how we ratify our Constitution is going to be something we're looking at.
Yep.
Again, the initiative petition process is great, but trying to get it to where how we ratify it through that election process or that voting process is going to be critical. So we're looking at those things, and hopefully we can get...
Well, now I hope the public realizes more why this is such an important issue, the initiative petition reform. Maybe they weren't paying that close of attention to it in the past, but now they see this is what happens to our state constitution. These are the real world effects. Because we didn't have initiative petition reform before, maybe now there can be a little bit more of a public push to see that through.
Yes. And I mean, we have central committees in the churches that are involved now. It's a really great way to just say, listen, we need all hands on deck, to understand this process. Mm-hmm. It's hard to talk about it because you can't say it in one or two sentences, right? It's complex. But knowing how important it is and how it works, again, every issue that we're facing as Christians in our Constitution we agree that are kind of morally wrong, have been enshrouded in our Constitution through this process. Mm-hmm. So it has been weaponized against us as Christian and faith-based people. And so understanding how we got here, what we can do about it, and being a part of that process is really critical.
Yeah. Well, just one more thing I wanted to go back to. So, you were saying that Amendment 3, there was a lot of different pieces of that one. It wasn't just simply about abortion. There was the transgender angle. There was the parental rights angle. And so do you think that maybe we could get some amendments passed in the future or start some petitions in regards to just chipping away at that piece by piece? I don't think most Missourians want parents to lose rights to their children the way that this amendment has laid it out. I think most Missourians would be against that. And so if maybe we can get that piece settled and we can maybe just chip away at this thing one piece at a time.
That is it. So what some of the narrative is up at the Capitol, and I heard this a little bit. Well, we need to honor the voice of the people and just let it be. Well, it encompassed so much, transgender, potential transgender issues, no liability for women that were hurt or children that were hurt, no age limit, all of it was such a massive lift. It's so broad of language that I don't know we can say with any kind of confidence that we knew what the voters were asking for, right? So to be able to take that back to them and say, okay, so are we okay with this portion of it? Are we okay with this? And breaking it down into 4 or 5 segments and putting that back on the ballot and actually having a referendum on, okay, is this what you wanted? Might be a way to fix some of that. Okay,
so that's the path forward. And I know we're just here recording this here just a few days after the election, but are petitions have they already got going? No. So again, it's just everybody, I think right now is just kind of reeling, trying to understand, okay, what's the best path forward? How do we mitigate it? And then who's going to be the tip of the spear on some of this? The AG's office, they're kind of looking at what they can do. The legislature's looking at what they can do. We're trying to, as a member of the legislature, we're trying to tag team with churches and communities to try to say, look, we're looking at this. And I think within the next month or two, we should be able to have something kind of laid out. Legislation gets filed in December, the beginning of December. And so I think between now and then we'll probably have some things kind of ironed out is the hope. Okay. Well, great. Well, we'll be looking for the petitions to come along perhaps. And I'm sure a lot of people in Newton County would definitely sign on to let's get some of this stuff back on the ballot and clarify what Missourians really want on this thing. Agreed. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, Senator Carter, thank you so much for your service to the 32nd District here in Missouri, for being such a great friend to the radio station, and for stopping by to inform our listeners about what's going on. Hey, it's my pleasure. Anytime. Thank you so much, Luke.